Universalist Church of Ogden. My name is Dylan Zwick, and I am glad to be helping lead worship today. We're proud, honored, and excited to be joined today by our guest minister, Rev Lora Young. The theme for our third Sunday services is, Who are we called to be in these times? Thank you all for joining us here today. We're so glad you're here in this community that strives to be loving, inclusive, and compassionate. One way to connect with this community is to let us know you're here. If you're a newcomer, welcome. We're so glad you're here, and we encourage you to fill out a newcomer card in the pews and put it in the offering basket when it comes by later. And please stay and chat with us after the service. We'll be having coffee and snacks in the hall just right across from the hall.
No.
Oh!
Not today.
Over there, sorry, my mistake. We will be having coffee and snacks on the second floor of the church education building, which is across the parking lot from us. It's in a gymnasium, and we'll be joined there by First Presbyterian Church, who are having their service right across the way. All right, thank you. Sorry about that. If you have been a long-time member of the congregation, we encourage you to wear your name tag. This helps everyone feel more connected and helps our newcomers get to know you more easily. And I will note that I'm aware of my hypocrisy right now in not having my name tag on me. I need to order another one. All right. If you haven't already, please put your phones on silent. And please remember there are 2 exits for this room and 2 exits from the building in each direction. We're so glad each and every one of you are here. Welcome. Say with me the chalice lighting words found in your order of service. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, for the light of truth, and for the energy of action. Reverend Lora Young is the minister of the South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society here in Utah, and we're happy to have her join us today. She strives in her worship to be relationship-centered, inclusive, thematic, reflective, justice-oriented, creative, and lighthearted. She is also a poet and enjoys writing stories about everyday life. The title of her sermon today is A Theology of Power, the Power to Love. Please join me in welcoming her to our pulpit this morning.
To be with you. I've been in Utah for 6 years now, and I thought it's about time to come down to Ogden with all of you. I mean, I have been through your town a couple times, but it's just lovely to participate in our long-standing tradition as sister communities to share pulpit and share time with one another, and I'm excited to be here with you. I am the Reverend Lora Young. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a tall, red-haired woman with purple glasses and a black suit and a stole given to me by my congregation when I was installed in 2022. With that, we waited 2 years to do installation due to the COVID pandemic. And I bring warm greetings on behalf of my congregation to yours, and hope that we can continue to find ways to collaborate, even though there is some distance between our 2 communities. The reading that I picked this morning to set us into this time of worship is by Annie Dillard. She writes, at a certain point, you say the woods, the sea, the mountains, listening. After a time you hear it. There is nothing there. There is nothing but those things only, those created objects, discrete, growing or holding or swaying, being rained on or raining, held, flooding or ebbing, standing or spread. Being rained on, you feel the world's word as a tension, a hum, a single chorused note, everywhere the same. And this is it. The hum is the silence. The silence is all there is. It is the Alpha and it is the Omega. It is God's brooding over the surface of the waters. It is the blinded note of the 10,000 things and the whine of wings. You take a step in the right direction and pray to this silence, even to address the prayer to world. Distinctions blur. Quit your tense. Pray without ceasing. Let us worship with one another in the spirit of loving the land.
Can you use the microphone just a little bit?
Oh, I didn't realize it wasn't turned on.
Right. No?
Nope. Is it on now?
It's not for this room.
Yeah, I think the microphone,
All right.
the microphone is for people on the line.
Yeah. It's on.
Well, to those of you in the online community, I will attempt to make extra loud for you, and I apologize for that. And let us sing. Please join me in singing hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. Let's just start with acknowledging where we are. It's been quite a week. It's been quite a week. It's been quite a couple of weeks. It's been quite a couple of years. And part of how we get through that with one another is by gathering in spaces like this. That this in and of itself is a practice of gathering and being together, but this is a practice of building hope in the face of all that is happening around us. just want to sort of share just for a moment my deep love for all of our UU communities, for the ways that you are continuing to show up and to show care for one another. Because that's really what church is all about, right? I'm going to say some pretty words here, and you're going to see some slides, and you may agree with some of the things that I say or don't say, but in the end, what it is the community of people that come together. And it is this sense of being with one another that is the more important piece than anything a minister or a preacher of any sort would have to say. But that said, I do have some words to offer you today. How many of you have seen that sort of phrase out there in the world? Yeah. How many of you know that that's actually a Universalist phrase? That at the time when the Universalists were active on the eastern seaboard, that the United States and most of the Western Christian world was in this place of Calvinism. And so to say something like God is love was pretty darn radical. So let me back us up a little bit more beyond even just that. When I say this word God, a word that often as Unitarian Universalists we feel a little, what is she going to say kind of feeling. When I say that word God, what do you see in your mind? Do you see just for an instant an old white man with a beard on a throne? Isn't it a bit odd that most of us in North America will have that image embedded in us? Even if we didn't grow up in an explicitly Christian context. We are living in a land here in North America that has one of its dominant theologies being Western Christianity. Another one of those being sort of this Greek mythology, and then of course at the level of the land are all the various and many diverse First Nations traditions that underlay all of that are actually part of the land underneath that. But this image, this idea of God is love and as God is this old white man, it's a very persistent image. So persistent, in fact, that we have often forgotten that it's actually just a metaphor. It's just a metaphor, but a metaphor that is so strong that we have forgotten it. That it actually has become the thing, rather than just a tool for explaining an unknown mystery in the world. And that's deeply problematic, isn't it? It's problematic because of the ways in which it then gets operationalized and used as a way to harm people in the name of loving people. And it is an idea, a metaphor that our Unitarian and our Universalist predecessors have been pushing on and beyond for our entire history. For they knew, just as we do, that images of God have a lot of power, and they deeply define outcomes for our spiritual life if we're not careful. And they also knew that saving the world with love meant saving it from images of the divine that were likely to harm rather than to help humanity. Now, as you can imagine, this idea of God the Father is rather exclusive. It elevates one aspect of the human experience, that of masculinity, above all else. It erases the feminine divine, and it elevates this idea that there is a single God over all other sacred beings and aspects in the world. And that idea, the promotion of that idea, the operationalization, that's not a good word, the impact of that action in our world is that many people find themselves leaving church. They find themselves leaving church because they grow out and beyond that image. And they certainly grow out of the impact of the human interactions that are shaped by that, which cause them to feel less whole. But one thing that I notice is not happening in the world, that even as people are leaving church, even as every single poll by the Pew Research Center shows that people are leaving church and that people are less and less religion. You know what's not dying? Spirituality. Spirituality is thriving. That sense of we are connected to ourselves and one another and something larger than ourselves, that is remaining consistent. And I also observe here in Utah that our UU congregations, of which there are 3 of us, we're still strong. We haven't died. We're actually even perhaps attracting more families and more people to our message. And I think part of the reason for that is that we're not stuck on God. We have intellectual freedom here, and we encourage spiritual exploration, and that's really attractive to folks that have been told they have to comply with an existing doctrine or die spiritually. So while UUs have long been marginalized for their fluidity, you know that phrase, they believe nothing. It turns out we've always just been a little ahead of the curve. The world is starting to catch up with us, it seems. And let's be clear, this is not some linear progression towards some perfect theology. We're no more perfect in our humanity than other humans here in a Unitarian Universalist context. Oh, maybe some days we are. But images of God continue to thrive and to change and to develop, and that is one of our strengths as a UU congregation, is that we welcome the evolution of our thought process. We welcome those questions, and we welcome the ability to arrive to an answer, even if it's just for a time or a phase in our life. Before the rise of monotheism, in the ancient Near East, and prior to the spread of Roman Christianity, that diversity was much more common than it may appear to be now here in 2026, especially the last few weeks when we're seeing this sort of thrust of Christian nationalism really bear its face in the United States. There's this idea within that movement that it is the only way, it's the right way, and it has always been that way, but that couldn't be farther than the truth. There has never been a monoculture of theologies, not even in ancient Christianity, which was so diverse. And while many of those communities did not survive or move to orthodoxy, Unitarians and Universalist theologies did. And that's not even just I want to also just reference that, of course, outside of Western Christianity, there are, of course, several other continents that also have thriving and flourishing traditions and cultures and practices that are pluralistic in their approach. One thing that I notice and I want to draw our attention to, though, is that across so many of these diverse religious practices is a common understanding of our interconnectedness to one another. And that interconnectedness is often related to a sense of the land upon which we are living our lives. And that stands in opposition to Western Christianity, which is determined to separate us from ourselves and from the land, from our own sense of authority, so that we can follow an external sense of authority. And Unitarian Universalism has always been that sort of heretical trend that stands in between, that says, no, we're going to retain our own individual sense of authority. In these traditions that underlie Western Christianity here in the United States, the many, many, many Native American First Nations traditions, there is, again, this common understanding of the interdependence and the pluralism, and the sense of the land is the ground of being. And again, in the ancient Near East, that's also repeated. Before there was Christianity, the ancient peoples of the Levant, they also understood the land to be life. And you could say even through the medieval years of Christianity, that sense of land was core to the Christian identity that was forming at that time. core idea of that being that God is everywhere in those traditions. There is no separation between creation and God, between the creatures and humanity, between all of these things. And of course, that also can have its negative theologies, like when God is identified as controlling the weather. We don't do that anymore because we have science. But there is this sort of connection to the land. And that's something that gets lost in modern United States much of the time. For most of us, especially those of us who come from European backgrounds, the colonization that happened in Europe was over 1,000 years ago. Over 1,000 years ago. So that connection to the land was broken so long ago. And because that connection was broken so long ago, when I say like relationship to the land, do you have any idea what I'm talking about? Do you think maybe, I mean, when I started thinking about this for myself theologically, I thought, does that mean gardening? Does that mean going for a walk? Does that mean going up into the mountains here and going for a hike? What does it mean to have a relationship with the land? Does it mean home ownership? What is land exactly? And again, that sense of confusion is a direct response to the ways in which communities have been removed and colonized over the millennia. We no longer have that connection to the land, and we are desperate to find it, right? How many of you have ever tried gardening only to discover it's actually really quite hard? Right? Getting that relationship back, getting back into contact with the land and understanding that the land is where your life comes from can be really hard work. And it's literally killing us, right? Because once you're separated from the land, you're separated from those who are around you, and you can be manipulated and controlled, which is what we're seeing in Minneapolis right now. We're seeing an outcry of people resisting further separation from the land at the hands of those that would take power and would follow an authority far outside of themselves. We know that we need a better and bigger spirituality to respond to what is happening in the world right now. We know we need a more life-giving and life-sustaining spirituality and a better religious ethic that can restore our connection to the land without throwing out all the good stuff that we've created, right? Without throwing out the internet and Zoom, without throwing out our poets, without throwing out advanced ideas of the international rule of law and those types of things, scientific advancements. But we need a spirituality that can hold and can catch up with that. We know that we need a spirituality that is big enough to lead us from degradation to repair. From repair to resilient balance, and from resilient balance to the ground of being. So from degradation to repair to resilience to balance to the ground of being. That is the pathway back to a relationship with the land that is more than just killing your tomato plants. Which brings me back to our Unitarian and our Universalist of the past. Our Unitarian ancestors fought for the wholeness of God and refused to deify the person of Jesus, in part because they understood that deifying Jesus was akin to deifying the emperors and the kings, and they already knew how dangerous and lethal that could become. And our Universalist ancestors, active here again on the eastern shore of the American colonies 400 years ago, rejected theology of divine election and eternal damnation, proclaiming instead a God of love. And their rejection of hell was radical for its time, and it really irked the Calvinist preachers that they were surrounded by. And that image of God is love caught on. And in fact, most of us probably still take it for granted. We may not even have known.
that the Universalists were responsible for spreading that particular piece of good news in the Calvinist colonies. And most of us here in 2026, from whatever tradition that you came from, whether it was you were born into this tradition or you found your way here at some other point, you're familiar with this idea that God is love. And if you grew up in a Christian context the way that I did, you sincerely believe that with all your heart. Which is why you were here, and is why I am here, rather than there. Because if you're like me, you discovered that God is love was a love that was limited to those that confess to certain commitments that you could not confess to. And you learned that because you could not do that, you were back in the Calvinist camp. You could go to hell. To which I believe you probably said, hell no. And made your way here. Perhaps this is ultimately the proof that you were a Unitarian, refusing to deify Jesus as a requirement for salvation, and a Universalist, believing that love is unconditional, long before you knew there was a community such as this. Which brings me to our current work here in Unitarian Universalism. We are quite the motley crew, are we not? Misfits spiritually, from our pagans and our Buddhists to our humanists to our naturalists to our used to be LDS and don't want to go back there to I still feel LDS but I'm still here anyway because I don't want to be in that tradition, to former Catholics and everything and everyone underneath and in between. And then our few very precious UUs from birth. Are there any UUs from birth in the room this morning? Yes, because Bill got one and Dylan. You got one and Dylan.
The elite.
I would just insert a small story. I was raised Presbyterian, but my dad and his side of the family were all Unitarian. And so I like to think of myself as like Unitarian adjacent. And then and my dad, when we started going to church when I was 5, he just looked in the phone book, and I guess he stopped at Presbyterian. And I was like, Dad, why didn't you just go a little further? I would have been a UU from birth, but now I'm a UU by tradition. So many of you probably are familiar with this new logo that we have. It's the work of the very sexily named Article 2 Commission here in Unitarian Universalism. It's part of the bylaws of our sort of association, and that has lots to do with our polity and lots of boring governance type issues. But the reality is that it's a wonderful way and a wonderful symbol for us to acknowledge that our theology is alive. That we are committed to not only the idea of updating and exploring our theology personally and within our communities, but that we actually make ourselves do it periodically as a whole denomination. Now, we're supposed to do it every 15 years. This time it took us 25 years to get around to it, but we finally got around to it, and this is the visual representation of that work that we undertook as a denomination or as an association, would be more technically correct, over the last few years. And there was lots of people who were very upset, and lots of people who were very excited, and that is actually just the nature of Unitarian Universalism, right? We don't agree with each other on a lot of things, but hopefully we stay committed to the process and come on through. And I want to say you don't ever have to give up your 7 principles if you don't want to. You get to keep those. No one's going to take those away, especially not me. But we also can have this side by side with this. And this is an interesting theological move. It moves us, I think, from God is love to love is God. And that's a really significant change. It's not just a cute, slight rearranging of the words. 400 years ago, our ancestors brought us this idea of God is love. And our current colleagues have asked us to take a leap from God is love to love is God. As the Rev Abhi Janamanchi has written, this is a fundamentally radical theological statement because it calls us to reframe the divine from distant and abstract to engaged and present. And that's kind of a hard task for us as Unitarian Universalists because we love our words and our intellect so much that we can sometimes forget that we have a body attached to our mind. But love is God is a call to remind us that love is not merely an ethical stance or an emotional state, but is the essence of our existence, perpetual and present. In that kind of framework where love is God, God is located in the acts of love we experience. Quoting again Rev Abhi, who writes, "It is the kindness we offer, the wounds we heal, and the courage we summon in the face of life's struggles. It is a real-time and present, relatable and relating God that shows up in human care and calls us to ask a different set of questions. Rather than why is God doing this to me, or how could God let this happen, or where is God in this suffering, we are called instead to notice that God is already and always present in the acts of care, in the response to suffering, rather than the cause of suffering. And the beauty of this stance is that belief is no longer required. It's beside the point. And when we do not have to believe in God for love to be present, we are free to recognize G-O-D as the force of love that shows up to respond, to connect, to heal, and to help in times of need. Love then becomes the guiding, orienting, direct force in our lives. And it doesn't require belief in the modern post-scientific revolution sense. It harkens back to the pre-scientific idea that belief is something that you are committed to. And we are committed to this. Love is God is a God that is no longer separated from humanity. A God that doesn't even need the metaphor of a cross to bridge the differences between humanity and the sacred. Don't let the Presbyterians know I just said that. Send a lightning bolt to me. Because a love that is already everything, that encompasses everything, and has no understanding of exception or separation, is the guiding force for good in the world. And I think it's ultimately a pretty good definition for that ground of being, that sense of what is the Lamb. I think it's a viable way through this mess that we're in right now, towards a humanity that we can be proud to be part of. And in fact, I'm still very proud to be part of humanity. What I notice is happening in Minneapolis is how many people are resisting. How many people are resisting and showing up. That's something that we can be proud of. And I think if we keep following that, we will find and build a spirituality that is big enough to support us through what lies ahead right now. And it just happens to be a resoundingly Unitarian Universalist theology, an approach fueled by a practical and active hope, and a commitment that love works every single time. A commitment that understands that love is the guiding force that can and will save us. So help us love. Thank you.
Yeah.
we continue our collective prayer by coming forward to engage in our weekly ritual that helps us to collectively hold the challenges and joys of being human. As you light a candle, let it hold your hopes, memories, and gratitudes for this beautiful, complicated world and for our lives. And as you drop a stone in our sacred gathering waters, may it be an opportunity to imagine these burdens and quests for forgiveness held in the community that will let the stone land with care and intention. Please come forward. Our offering is a practice of gratitude for this community filled with care and courage, love and resistance. We commit to keeping this community resourced for the ministries ahead, both in our walls and beyond. The offering we collect each week supports us in being the community that can best respond to the needs of these times. As we collect our offering today, we remember our interconnectedness and interdependence, and we generously offer our care with hope to support all through these times. Please rise and body your voice, and facing the center aisle, sing together the offering song printed in your order of service. Your abundant generosity is part of modeling care and love. Thank you. All right, a few announcements. First, a big one. We have a new admin. Shallon Sorensen is excited to serve as the Congregational Administrator at UUCO. She brings over a decade of experience helping community-centered organizations run smoothly, including managing offices, coordinating volunteers, and nurturing connection behind the scenes. Shallon lives in Brigham City with her husband, Chad, and their 4 children. She loves soaking in hot springs, exploring the outdoors with her family, diving into personal development, learning things that expand her perspective, and occasionally breaking into song and dance when the mood strikes. She is passionate about creating welcoming spaces where people feel valued, supported, and connected. Drawn to UUCO's open-hearted spirit and commitment to honoring every person's journey, Shallon looks forward to contributing to the warmth and work of this vibrant community. And she's here with us today, so Shallon, please just come down here and briefly say hi to us. Yep.
Hello, everyone. As he said, I'm Shallon Sorensen, and today is my first day, so I'm excited to be here and excited to get to know all of you and look forward to spending time together. So, thank you.
All right, thank you, Shallon. January's potluck video gathering will be held at the home of Renee Quick Ratchford and Braven Dyer at 6 o'clock on Friday, January 23rd. So next Friday, or this next Friday. Please come and bring a potluck dish to share. The movie will be the Guernsey Literary and Potato Pie Society, or Potato Peel Pie Society. And a quick summary of that is a writer forms an unexpected bond with the residents of Guernsey Island in the aftermath of World War II as she decides to write a book about their experiences during the war. It's rated TV 14 and it has an 81% certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. They will be serving chicken curry with rice. Space is limited. Please RSVP to Renee if you'd like to come. And her email and phone number can be found in the newsletter. All right, so that's it for announcements. And so our closing hymn is number 368 in Singing the Living Tradition. Oh, we have another announcement. Sorry, come on down.
So we have a book club here at UU. We meet on the third Wednesday of every month. So the third Wednesday is this coming Wednesday, the 21st. We meet at 7 o'clock here at the church. There's a library there where we meet. The book this time is Last Bus to Wisdom. And even if you haven't read the book and you're interested, please come. We have a very interesting conversations and a really congenial group, and we invite you to come and join us.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Oh, all right.
As you know, our church, along with First Presbyterian, sponsor a Girl Scout troop. And it is Girl Scout cookie time. And if you want to receive cookies during the first week of March, when they will first be delivered, then contact me and we can get your order in sooner rather than later. However, you can still purchase cookies through the month of March, and we will have probably a booth in the Geneva Hall, well, not Geneva Hall, but
Education building
next to the coffee hour in March at some point. But if you want them sooner, just come find me.
Oh, Chalice.
This is more of a community FYI. Tomorrow at Union Station from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. is from Project Success. They are hosting their annual Dr. Martin Luther King breakfast and march. So there will be a breakfast, 9 a.m. at Union Station, and then there's a speaker, and then afterwards they'll be marching down to the down 25th Street to the amphitheater. So it's a community event. So a good way to show up and do a little nonviolent protest.
What time?
9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Yeah, talking at Union Station.
Any others? All right. Thank you all. I love Girl Scout cookie time because it is when I get to feel virtuous about buying cookies. All right, so our closing hymn is number 368 from Singing the Living Tradition, the hardback hymnal, and it is Now Let Us Sing.
Sing to the power of faith within. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Sing to the power of faith within. Sing to the power of faith within. Sing to the power of faith within. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Sing to the Sing to the power of the joy within. Sing to the power of the joy within. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Sing to the power of the joy within.
All right. As the service comes to an end, please join me in saying the chalice extinguishing words in your order of service. We extinguish this chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, nor the energy of action. Thank you all for coming, and as I said at the beginning, please join us for coffee and conversation across the parking lot at the second floor of the church education.